So that's that framework. Now, you have to recognize immediately the correlation, the similarities between, and I hate to say this, but it's true, between hip-hop in its heterodox phase. What's some of the new heterodox crap that they got? Occultism in its new paganism in its heterodox phase, and terrorism. There's a relationship. There is a relationship. There is, Dr. Campbell told you, there's a relationship between heterodox, not bubblegum hip-hop now, real hip-hop, heterodox hip-hop, occultism, paganism, and terrorism. There is a seminal thread. And it is that it's heterodox. It's not mainstream. Terrorism is really nothing more than another heterodox community. It is a heterodox community that is in opposition to the status quo, the mainstream. And the mainstream, in terms of political power, is centralized political power. So there might be an argument, and I don't want to get into technical specifics, and people said that they appreciated that I wasn't giving examples, but I'll give one example because I think it counts. Sort of the role of Hamas. Do you identify Hamas as being state actor, or do you identify Hamas as being a terrorist organization? There's a good debate there, right? Why? Because they provide functions, as the state would provide. Hamas does provide functions for the community. They do. That's undeniable. So are they state actors then? Are they sovereign then? What is the nature of their role then? Are they leaders of a state then? What is their function? Or is it a terrorist community? Right, so that we can make demarcations, because there's going to be some gray area here between what is properly orthodox and what is properly heterodox. But the idea is, barring probably Hamas and a few other organizations, but barring that, Al-Qaeda is, whether or not you believe that they're true, all of this would presuppose that Al-Qaeda is a legitimate organization, or Al-Qaeda 2.0, the debate that's left. Al-Qaeda is a legitimate terrorist organization. It is primarily decentralized in its configuration, and it's the centralization that determines, politically speaking, orthodoxy or heterodoxy. So such that it's not about violence. Violence isn't the line of demarcating in terms of this discourse on, and I'm going really deep now that I think about it. I'm giving out all the goodies, but it doesn't really matter. Violence really isn't the demarcation between heterodoxy and orthodoxy, because it's undeniable that government, orthodoxy, has a monopoly on violence. That's a given. And there's no conspiracy theory on that. That's just a fact. It is a fact. Government has monopoly on violence. In terms of the demarcation between legitimized sovereignty and the heterodox terrorist community, it is one of centralization. So there are many, many implications that we can pull from this, none of which I'm going to discuss publicly, all of which I'll write academically, but it's important to think about the possible distinctions in delimiting and defining the role of centralization as a means of demarcating heterodox community from orthodox communities, right, in terms of terrorism. So that's the first. You might not have thought I was going to take it to that point, but it's important in attempt to assess this risk, because independent to the actual intent of any individual actor, any individual, the question is decentralization itself a threat? Not is terrorism a threat, or Osama bin Laden a threat, or this dude a threat, but is there an inherent risk, unintended risk? Right, now we can get really technical, right? Is there an unintended, essentially, is there an inherent unintended risk in the structure of destabilized fill in the blank? That's the million-dollar question. My gut feeling off the top, I don't know. I actually have to think about that. I'd have to sort of reduce it and see what comes of that. But that is the question, right? Should we, orthodoxy, be concerned with decentralization as a potential risk? That's a more meaningful discussion, right? That's a more meaningful discussion, and a recognition of what that might look like would require us to sort of compare similarities in other heterodox communities. So when we talk about heterodoxy, we're still talking about power. When we're talking about heterodoxy, we're just talking about not mainstream stuff. So we'd have to first sweep away all of the presupposition having to do with violence, because all of that discourse is misses the mark, all of it. Because undeniably the state holds complete authority and command on the use and appropriation of violence. That's just a fact. Okay, so now at the top of page 12, number 2. We're still talking about governance. 2. Two frameworks for conceptualizing power: sovereign and facilitative. Now this is important, right? I talked, and I'm not going to do the sort of intro discourse on sort of what sovereignty is. That's easy. I want to talk a little bit about facilitative, but before, let me go through this paradox. The more powerful states become, think about this, right? The more powerful states become in their efforts to guarantee security, the more they become a threat to that security, right? So that the idea is, in terms of the state attempting to secure itself from external threat, that mechanism that is initiated to protect, as I said before, is going to some extent, undeniably come to a conflictual meeting with civil liberties, privacy, and any number of things. The idea is, and I think this is a problem, to be specific with respect to conspiracy theorists. The idea is, I really believe that conspiracy theorists, collectively, believe that the intent in undermining, quote-unquote, civil liberties or invading privacy is an end in itself. That's so freaking perfect, right? That the conspiracy theorists really believe that the end goal is the invasion of privacy. That is the end goal. I think the best to be, and I'm positing like prima facie conspiracy theory. I don't think many people actually understand what it is that they believe, but their belief would have to manifest in order for them to maintain inherent consistency, the belief that the end, the telos for political will for the conspiracy theorists is directed toward, in almost a totalitarian sense, it had to be, the invasion of privacy for invading privacy. The violation of civil liberties for the violation of civil liberties. I think, there's some legitimacy to that because that has happened historically. So it's not just delegitimize the point, there is legitimacy to that point. But the conspiracy theory as a heterodox theory, as a heterodox approach, would have to be articulated in that manner. For an orthodox approach, the orthodox approach, if it's to be fair, would have to say there is a recognition of the possibility to violate civil liberties. There is a recognition for the possibility to violate privacy, but the possibility, not that it will happen, but the possibility that it may occur is only a means to some greater good. So you evoke some utilitarianist, sort of collectivist good as a means of justifying an instance or two of, and I guess I am doing ethics, right? As a means, you evoke sort of a utilitarian ethic for the greatest good as a means of justifying the particular violation of this individual or that individual. And there's huge problems with this, right? But there is a sense in which states have to function independent too. That's why it's a state. But that in itself is deep because there is no such thing as state. It's all abstract concept. But the state has to function, by definition, independent to the actions of any individual person, right? So there might be some theoretical justification. The idea is, as long as we, 2.1, give me feedback on this, because I'm listening to myself and I'm like, this is way the freak out there now. I wanted it to get deeper, but now I want to rein it back in a bit. Because I feel like, I sort of lost myself for a second. And it was like, wow, this is really deep. So give me a vibe at 2.1. Like anything after 8-hour mark, let me know what the vibe is. And if it's too out there. Not to say that I don't think you're capable of understanding this. I know you're capable of understanding this. It's not that. But it might just be too out there. And granted, I am doing this for myself, but I do want this to help other people. And if it's not doing that, then I'm failing, right? So rein me in a little bit because that, I sort of heard myself and it just went off on the deep end. Anyway, sovereign power. So let's talk about that. So now we're still on...